The morning sun rose over the mountains of Montana, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Below, in a valley surrounded by pine forests, the New Hope Global Orphanage began another day. It was the year 2347, and Earth had become something special to the galaxy. It had become a place of safety for children who had no one left to care for them. Director Grace Holland stood on the main building's balcony, holding a cup of coffee as she watched the children wake up. She was 58 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a simple bun and eyes that had seen both war and peace. 20 years ago, she had commanded a battle cruiser. Now, she commanded something far more important. Below her, over 3,000 children lived and played and learned. They came from 47 different species. Some had fur, some had scales, some had skin in colors that humans had never imagined, and mixed among them were human orphans too, children who had lost their families to accidents, disease, or the simple cruelty of fate. Grace smiled as she watched a group of children run across the grass toward the dining hall. A human boy named led the group. He was 12 years old, tall for his age, with messy brown hair and a kind face. Behind him ran 6 younger children. 2 were human. 1 was a small with blue fur and large ears. 3 were tiny creatures with soft gray skin and 4 arms each. Held the door open for all of them, counting heads as they passed. He had been at New Hope since he was 4 years old. Now he served as a big brother to the younger ones, especially the alien children who were still learning human ways. In the security office, Sam Porter watched the morning through dozens of camera feeds. He was 34, with short black hair and a scar on his chin from his military days. He had served in 3 different conflicts before finding his way to New Hope. Some people asked him why a trained soldier would waste his skills guarding an orphanage. He always gave the same answer. There is nothing more worth protecting than this. Sam checked the perimeter sensors one more time, then headed out to walk the grounds. The orbital defense satellites showed green across his tablet. Earth's defense grid was one of the strongest in the galaxy. No one would be foolish enough to attack a sanctuary world. In the medical wing, Dr. Marsh was already at work. She was 42 years old, who had studied alien life forms for 2 decades. Now she used that knowledge to heal children instead of writing research papers. This morning, she was treating a young who had caught a cold. The child's purple scales had turned slightly gray from the fever. "You will feel better soon," said softly, adjusting the temperature of the child's bed. "Just rest and drink plenty of water." The child looked up at her with large golden eyes. "Will you stay with me?" Smiled and pulled up a chair. "Of course I will." This was what made Earth different. This was what confused the rest of the galaxy. Humans took care of children who were not their own. They did not ask what species a child belonged to. They did not calculate whether helping would bring them profit or advantage. They simply saw a child in need and they helped. The Galactic Council had spent decades trying to understand this behavior. Most species cared only for their own young. Some abandoned children who were sick or weak. The idea of building a massive facility to raise the orphans of other species seemed like madness to them. But humanity did not care what others thought. The children needed help, so humanity helped them. At noon, Grace gathered her senior staff for their daily meeting. Sam reported that security was normal, reported that all children were healthy except for a few minor illnesses. The education director reported good progress in all classes. Everything was peaceful. Then Grace shared something that had been troubling her. "I received a message last night," she said. "Anonymous, untraceable. It claimed that the Dominion has marked New Hope as a target." The room went quiet. Everyone knew about They were a militaristic empire that ruled over 200 star systems. They believed that compassion was weakness. They saw humanity's orphanage as an insult to the natural order. Sam leaned forward. "Do you believe the message is real?" Grace shook her head slowly. "I do not know. I have reported it to Earth Defense Command. They are investigating, but they found no evidence of any threat." "They are not stupid," said. "Attacking a sanctuary world would turn the entire galaxy against them." "Perhaps," Grace replied, "but they have been growing bolder. The Galactic Council warned us last month about rising tensions." Sam stood up. "I will double security patrols tonight, just in case." Grace nodded. "Thank you, Sam, but let us not frighten the children. They have already known too much fear in their young lives." That evening helped the younger children get ready for bed. He read stories to the triplets, who loved tales about human explorers. He taught the young a simple song that human children sang before sleep. He checked on them in the medical wing and promised to visit again tomorrow. As he walked back to his own room, stopped by a window and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, his parents had died when he was too young to remember them. Somewhere out there, the parents of all these alien children had died too. But here in this place, they had found a new family. Grace made her final rounds at midnight. She walked through the dormitory halls, listening to the soft breathing of sleeping children. She paused at each room, each bed, each small form curled up beneath warm blankets. These were her children now, all 3,000 of them. She did not know that it was the last peaceful night they would ever have. Far beyond the edge of the solar system, where the light of the sun was just another distant star, a fleet of warships emerged from hyperspace. 20 destroyers, 5 heavy cruisers, 1 command carrier. Their weapons were already charging. The commander of the fleet looked at the distant blue dot that was Earth. His orders were clear. Send a message that the galaxy would never forget. Show humanity what happened to species that were weak enough to love. The fleet began its approach. In 8 hours they would reach Earth. In 8 hours everything would change. But for now, the children of New Hope slept peacefully, dreaming of tomorrow. Dawn was breaking over Montana when Sam Porter noticed something wrong. He was sitting in the security office, drinking his 3rd cup of coffee, when 3 of his monitors went dark at the same time. He set down his cup and leaned closer to the screens. The orbital defense satellites were going offline, one by one, like candles being blown out. Sam's blood went cold. He grabbed his communicator and called Grace directly. "Director, we have a problem, a big problem." Grace was already awake, reviewing supply reports in her office. "What is it, Sam?" "The orbital grid is failing. Someone is taking out our satellites." For a moment there was silence. Then Grace's voice came back, calm but urgent. "Sound the alarm. Begin evacuation protocol 7. Sam hit the emergency button on his console. Throughout New Hope, red lights began to flash and a calm, recorded voice spoke through every speaker. "All staff and children, please proceed to your designated shelter areas. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." In the dormitories, children woke up confused and scared. Staff members moved quickly from room to room, gathering the young ones and guiding them toward the underground bunkers. Some children cried. Some were too frightened to move. The older ones helped carry the younger ones. Was out of his bed the moment the alarm sounded. He ran to the room where the triplets slept and found them huddled together, shaking with fear. Their 4 arms wrapped around each other tightly. "Come with me," said, keeping his voice steady. "We need to go underground. I will keep you safe." The triplets looked at him with wide eyes. They trusted him. They followed him. In the medical wing, Dr. Marsh refused to leave. There were still children in the beds, too sick to move quickly, a young with a fever, 2 human toddlers recovering from surgery, a with a broken leg. "Go," she told her nurses. "Get yourselves to safety. I will bring the children." "We are not leaving you," said one nurse, a young man named Danny. Looked at him and saw that he meant it. She nodded. "Then help me move them, quickly." Outside, the sky was still dark, but something was falling through the clouds, streaks of fire moving too fast to be meteors. Sam watched them through the security cameras and felt his heart break. Strike craft, dozens of them. The first explosion hit the eastern fence. The ground shook so hard that children fell down in the hallways. The second explosion destroyed the power station. The lights went out, replaced by dim emergency lighting. Sam grabbed his weapon and ran toward the main entrance. He was not going to let them in, not while a single child remained above ground. Grace reached the central hallway and found chaos. Staff members were herding children toward the bunker entrances, but there were so many of them. So many small bodies moving through dark corridors, crying and screaming and calling for help. "Keep moving," Grace shouted over the noise. "Everyone keep moving, do not stop." Another explosion. This one was closer. Dust fell from the ceiling and a crack appeared in the wall. Grace heard the sound of enemy aircraft passing overhead, their engines screaming like angry beasts. Had made it halfway to the bunkers with the triplets when he heard crying from a side room. He stopped. A small human girl, maybe 4 years old, was sitting alone in the dark, too scared to move. "Stay here," told the triplets. He ran into the room, picked up the little girl, and ran back. Now he had 4 children to protect. He kept moving. Sam reached the security checkpoint just as the first soldiers landed outside. They were tall, with gray skin and 4 red eyes each. Their armor was black and their weapons glowed with deadly energy. Sam raised his rifle and fired. He knew he could not stop them. There were too many. But every second he fought was another second for children to reach safety. He thought about the kids he had watched grow up over the past 3 years. He thought about their faces, their laughter, their futures. He did not stop fighting until he could not fight anymore. The main building collapsed at 6:47 in the morning, and Danny were still inside, carrying the last 2 children toward the bunker entrance. The ceiling came down before they could reach it. When the dust settled, the commander ordered his troops to withdraw. The mission was complete. The orphanage was destroyed. The message had been sent. Grace emerged from the bunker 2 hours later when the enemy ships had finally left. She climbed out of the underground shelter and looked at what remained of New Hope. There was almost nothing left. Broken walls, burning rubble, smoke rising into the morning sky. She stood there in silence as staff members and children came up behind her. Was among them, still holding the little girl he had saved. The triplets clung to his legs, afraid to let go. The count took 3 hours. When it was finished, Grace had to sit down. 847 children were dead. 156 staff members, including Sam and Danny, and so many others who had given their lives for the young ones. But over 2,000 children had survived. Because of Sam at the checkpoint, because of in the medical wing, because of every adult who had thought of the children before themselves. The broadcast their attack across every communication channel in the galaxy. They showed images of the destroyed orphanage. They mocked humanity for being weak. They called it a lesson in the natural order of things. But they made a mistake. They did not understand what they had done. In cities all across Earth, people watched the broadcast in silence. In orbital stations and on colony ships and in military bases scattered across 100 worlds, humans saw the bodies of children being pulled from the rubble. They saw species that were not their own, children they had never met, lying dead because someone had decided that compassion was a crime. For a long moment, humanity was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. Then, in a billion hearts at the same time, something changed. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time woke up. The galaxy had seen humanity as gentle and kind and soft. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Grace stood in the ruins of New Hope, surrounded by crying children, and she looked up at the sky where the enemy had fled. "You should not have done this," she whispered. "You should not have touched our children." The wind carried her words away, but somewhere, somehow, the universe heard them. War was coming. 3 days had passed since the attack. 3 days since the galaxy had watched humanity bleed. 3 days since everything changed. Admiral Cole stood on the bridge of his flagship, the carrier Defiance. He was 61 years old, with white hair and a face lined by decades of service. He had retired 5 years ago, believing that his fighting days were over. He had been wrong. The president had called him personally. Her voice had been steady, but he could hear the steel beneath it. "I need you. Our children need you." He had put on his uniform within the hour. Now he looked at the tactical display showing humanity's response to the attack. Ships were gathering from every corner of human space. Military vessels, cargo ships converted for war, even civilian craft whose owners had volunteered to serve. It was the largest mobilization in human history. In the capital city of Earth, President Maria Santos addressed the Galactic Council through a live broadcast. She was 54 years old, a former diplomat who had spent her career building peace. Today, she was ending that career. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice calm but cold. 3 days ago, the Dominion attacked a sanctuary world. They murdered 847 children, children who had already lost everything, children we had sworn to protect. The alien diplomats watched her in silence. Some expected an emotional plea, others expected a request for help or sanctions. None of them expected what came next. Ambassador stepped forward to deliver humanity's official response. She was 49 years old, with sharp eyes and a reputation for being unshakable. Today, her hands trembled slightly as she held the document. "The United Earth Government hereby declares total war against the Dominion," she read. "There will be no negotiation. There will be no ceasefire. There will be no peace until every individual responsible for this attack faces justice. This is not a request. This is not a discussion. This is simply what is going to happen." The council chamber erupted in noise. Diplomats shouted questions and objections. The ambassador laughed out loud, calling humanity's threat pathetic and meaningless. Waited for silence. Then she activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air above the council floor. The bodies of children, the ruins of the orphanage, the faces of the dead, species after species, all of them innocent, all of them gone. "Look at them," said. "Look at what they did, and then tell me again that we are being unreasonable." No one spoke. On Earth, the transformation was already happening. Within 48 hours of the attack, every major factory had shifted to wartime production. Ships that usually carried food and medicine now carried weapons and armor. Schools became training centers. Hospitals prepared for casualties that had not yet arrived. Old soldiers lined up at recruitment offices. Some of them could barely walk. Some of them brought weapons older than theirs. They did not care. They wanted to serve. They needed to serve. A 90-year-old veteran named George Parks showed up at a recruitment center in Seattle. When the young officer told him he was too old to fight, George looked him in the eye and said, "Those were my friends who died. Give me a gun or I will find one myself." They gave him a position training young pilots. It was the most effective training program in the fleet. Captain commanded the carrier Relentless. He was 38 years old, known for his calm thinking and steady leadership. When the casualty list arrived, he read through it with professional detachment until he reached a name that stopped his heart. Emma, age 7, his sister's daughter, the little girl he had taught to ride a bicycle 2 summers ago, the little girl who called him uncle and asked him to tell stories about the stars. Did not cry, he did not scream. He simply closed the file, walked to his quarters, and sat in silence for 1 hour. When he came out, his face was stone. He never spoke about Emma again, but everyone on his ship knew why he fought. The High Command received intelligence reports about humanity's mobilization and dismissed them. Admiral, commander of the Dominion's military forces, reviewed the numbers and laughed. "They have perhaps 200 combat vessels," he said to his staff. We have over 1,000. Let them come. We will crush them and end this foolish species forever. He did not know about the protocol. It was humanity's darkest secret. For over a century, while publicly maintaining a small defense fleet, Earth had been building in the shadows. Hidden shipyards in asteroid fields, weapons caches buried on dead moons, entire battle stations waiting in the darkness between stars, powered down but ready. The protocol had been created after humanity's first contact with hostile alien life, 150 years ago. The council of that era had decided that humanity should appear weak to the galaxy while secretly preparing for the worst. They hoped the preparations would never be needed. They were wrong. Admiral Cole activated the protocol on the morning of the third day. Across human space, ships that had been sleeping for decades came to life. Weapons systems that had never been fired powered up for the first time. A fleet that the galaxy did not know existed began to gather. When the final count was made, humanity had over 600 warships, 3 times what anyone had expected, and every single one of them was heading for space. Before the fleet departed, Grace Holland asked to address them. She stood in the ruins of New Hope, surrounded by the children who had survived, and spoke to every ship through a live broadcast. "I am not a soldier," she said. "I am just an old woman who loves children, but I am asking you, all of you, to do something for me. The ones who did this took our children. They took them and they killed them and they laughed about it." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was heavy with grief. "So I am asking you to bring them home, all of them, the dead and the living. Bring justice for the ones we lost, and make sure this never happens again. Not to our children, not to anyone's children, ever." The fleet launched that evening. 600 ships carrying 300,000 soldiers. The largest armada humanity had ever assembled, moving through hyperspace toward the enemy that had woken a sleeping giant. Admiral Cole stood on his bridge, watching the stars stretch into lines as his ship jumped to faster-than-light speed. "May God have mercy on them," he said quietly, "because we will not." The war had begun. The galaxy expected humanity to attack military targets first. That was how wars were fought. You destroyed your enemy's weapons, then you destroyed their factories, then you forced them to surrender. It was logical. It was efficient. It was what they had prepared for. They were not prepared for what happened instead. The first human ships to enter space did not fire a single weapon. They were not warships at all. They were medical vessels, evacuation transports, and humanitarian aid carriers. They flew directly to the nearest colony and broadcast a message on all channels. "Attention! We are here for your children. We will not harm them. We will take them to safety until this war is over. Any parent who wishes to send their child with us may do so. We will protect them with our lives." The military commander on the colony did not understand. Was this a trick? A trap? He ordered his ships to intercept the human vessels. Admiral Cole's warships dropped out of hyperspace behind the humanitarian fleet. 6 battleships, 20 cruisers, enough firepower to turn the colony into ash. "This is Admiral Cole of the United Earth Fleet," Cole broadcast. "We are not here to kill your children. We are here to save them. Stand down and let our medical ships do their work, or we will remove you from our path." The commander hesitated. In that moment of hesitation, something strange happened. Civilians on the colony began bringing their children to the landing zones. Mothers and fathers who had seen the footage of what their government had done to human children. Parents who were afraid of what was coming and wanted their young ones far away from it. Over 3,000 children were evacuated that day. Human soldiers carried them onto ships with gentle hands, gave them food and blankets, and promised them they would be safe. The news spread across the Dominion like wildfire. The humans were not killing children. The humans were saving them. Captain led the assault on the Third Fleet 3 days later. His carrier Relentless was at the center of the formation, surrounded by dozens of smaller ships. He commanded from the bridge, his voice calm, his orders precise. But those who knew him could see the cold fire in his eyes. He had not forgotten Emma. He would never forget Emma. The battle lasted 6 hours. The Third Fleet had 80 ships. By the end, they had 12. Did not lose a single vessel. His tactics were not just effective. They were terrifying. He seemed to know what the enemy would do before they did it. When the admiral sent a surrender signal, accepted it immediately. He took prisoners. He treated their wounded. He followed every rule of war that they had ignored when they bombed an orphanage. "Why?" a captured officer asked him. "We killed your children. Why do you not kill us?" Looked at him for a long moment. "Because if I become like you, then you win, and you will never win, not against us, not ever." On the ground, human soldiers landed on colony after colony. They fought military forces with fierce determination. They showed no mercy to soldiers who resisted, but whenever they found children, they stopped fighting and started protecting. A sergeant named Maria Torres led her squad into a school building, expecting to find enemy troops using it as a base. Instead, she found 300 children hiding in the basement, terrified and crying. Their teachers had fled. Their parents were nowhere to be found. Maria looked at her soldiers. They were tired and angry and hungry for revenge. They had all lost friends in the war. Some had lost family in the original attack. "Secure the building," she ordered. "Set up a perimeter. Nobody touches these kids." Her soldiers obeyed without question. For the next 2 days, until evacuation ships arrived, they guarded those children as if they were their own. One of her soldiers, a young man named Jake, asked her why they were doing this. Maria looked at him and said, "Because this is who we are. We protect children, all children. That is what makes us different from the monsters who bombed New Hope." The Dominion began to crack from within. Citizens who had supported their government's aggressive expansion started to question everything. They watched videos of human soldiers carrying bobbies to safety, while their own leaders sent troops to bomb orphanages. A protest began on one of the core worlds, then another, then another. Admiral demanded more ships, more soldiers, more weapons. The Dominion Council argued about whether to continue the war. Every day brought news of another defeat, another colony lost, another fleet destroyed. And always, there were the images of human soldiers protecting children. A general named was captured after a failed defense of an industrial world. He was brought before Admiral Cole for questioning. "I do not understand," you said. "You wage total war against us. You destroy our fleets. You conquer our worlds, but you save our children. Why? Why do you not hate them for what we did?" Cole sat down across from him. He was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Because they are children," Cole said simply. "They did not bomb our orphanage. They did not choose to be born. They are innocent, and we do not punish the innocent for the crimes of the guilty." Stared at him, "But we killed your children." "Yes, you did, and we will never forgive that. Every single person who planned that attack, who ordered it, who carried it out, will face justice. But your children will grow up knowing 2 things. First, they will know what their government did. Second, they will know that the species their government attacked chose to save them anyway." Cole leaned forward. "That is how you break a cycle of hatred, not by killing, but by refusing to become what you are fighting against." Back on Earth, the first ships carrying orphans arrived. Children whose parents had been killed in the war, who had nowhere else to go. Grace Holland was waiting at the landing zone to receive them. Stood beside her. He was 13 now, older than he had been before the attack in more ways than one. He had nightmares about that morning. He probably always would. But when the children came down the ramp, scared and confused and far from home, stepped forward. "Hi," he said to a young girl with gray skin and 4 frightened red eyes. "My name is, are you hungry? We have food, come with me. You are safe now." The girl looked at him, this strange human with only 2 eyes and soft pink skin. She did not understand his language perfectly, but she understood his tone. She understood his smile. She took his hand. Grace watched them walk toward the temporary shelter, and for the first time in weeks she allowed herself to cry, not from sadness, from something else, something that felt like hope. 1 month later, the human fleet arrived at the 50 ships took up position in orbit. The rest blockaded every approach route. Admiral Cole broadcast his terms. Surrender every official involved in planning and ordering the attack on Earth. Face judgment for your crimes, or we stay here forever. Your choice. The government had 3 days to respond. The government fell on the 2nd day. It did not fall because of the human fleet in orbit. It fell because the people had finally seen the truth. They had watched their leaders order the murder of children. They had watched humans respond by saving young. They had seen cruelty answered with compassion, hatred answered with protection. And they were ashamed. The protests that had started on the outer colonies spread to the itself. Millions of citizens filled the streets, demanding that their leaders face justice. When the military was ordered to stop them, half the soldiers refused. They laid down their weapons and joined the crowds. On the morning of the 2nd day, the Dominion Council voted to remove the High Chancellor from power. By evening, they had surrendered every official involved in planning the attack on New Hope. Admiral Cole received the surrender aboard his flagship. He watched as shuttle after shuttle brought war criminals to face judgment. 27 military commanders, 14 council members, the High Chancellor himself. "It is over," his aide said quietly. Cole shook his head. "No, this part is over. The harder work is just beginning." The War Crimes Tribunal lasted 4 months. It was held on neutral ground, a station belonging to the Galactic Council. Judges from 12 different species heard evidence, testimony, and confessions. The trials were broadcast across the galaxy so that everyone could see justice being done. The humans insisted on fair trials. They presented evidence. They allowed defense arguments. They did not torture or execute prisoners without process. Many species found this confusing. The humans had every right to demand blood, yet they demanded only justice. When asked about this, Ambassador gave a simple answer. Revenge feels good for a moment, then it poisons everything it touches. Justice takes longer, but it heals. We want to heal. We want the galaxy to heal. Not everyone was satisfied with the sentences. Some humans wanted death for all the guilty. Some wanted suffering equal to what the children had experienced. Grace Holland was asked what she thought should happen to the people who killed her children. She was quiet for a long time before answering. "I want them to live," she said finally. "I want them to live long lives in prison, surrounded by pictures of the children they killed. I want them to wake up every day and remember what they did. Death would let them escape. I do not want them to escape." The sentences ranged from life imprisonment to 20 years, depending on the level of involvement. The High Chancellor received life without possibility of release. He would spend his remaining days on a prison station, staring at the stars he would never touch again. 6 months after the attack, Admiral Cole visited the ruins of New Hope. Construction crews had already begun rebuilding. The new facility would be 3 times larger than the original, with defenses that could stop a battle fleet. Cole walked through the memorial garden where the names of the dead were carved into black stone. 847 children, 156 staff members, each name a life cut short, each name a universe of possibility that would never exist. He found Sam Porter's name near the bottom of a wall. He had never met the man, but he knew his story. A soldier who gave his life holding a checkpoint so that children could escape. "You did good, soldier," Cole said quietly. "You held the line." The Galactic Council passed the Montana Accords 3 months after the war ended. The accords declared that any attack on children of any species would be considered an attack on the entire galactic community. A coalition defense fleet would respond to any such attack with overwhelming force. It was humanity's idea, but every major species signed it, even former enemies, even the new government. Grace Holland was appointed to lead a new organization, the Office of Galactic Child Protection. She would oversee sanctuary worlds throughout the galaxy, ensuring that orphaned children of any species would always have a safe place to go. "I am too old for this," she told President Santos when offered the position. "You are exactly old enough," the president replied. "These children need someone who understands what they have lost. They need you, Grace." Grace accepted the position the same day. The rebuilt New Hope Orphanage opened 1 year after the attack. Over 5,000 children lived there now, from more than 100 different species. Among them were several hundred orphans, children of war whose parents had died on both sides of the conflict. A permanent defense fleet orbited Earth now, crewed by veterans who had fought in the war. They called themselves the Guardian Fleet. Their mission was simple: protect the children, always protect the children. Captain was offered command of the Guardian Fleet, but he declined. Instead, he asked for a quieter assignment. He spent his days now teaching young officers at the academy, passing on what he had learned in the war. Once a month he visited a small grave in a cemetery outside the city. He left flowers. He told stories about the stars. He never forgot. Was 14 years old now. He had grown taller, stronger, more serious than boys his age should be. The war had changed him, but it had not broken him. He spent his afternoons helping at the orphanage, just as he always had. He taught the new children how to play human games. He read them stories before bed. He showed the children that humans could be trusted. One day, a young girl named Sira asked him a question that stopped him cold. "Why did you save us? Your people, I mean. My people killed your people. Why did you not hate us?" Sat down beside her. He thought about the question for a long time. He thought about Sam, who had died at the checkpoint. He thought about who had stayed behind for the sick children. He thought about all the friends he had lost that morning. "Because hating you would not bring them back," he said finally, "and hurting you would just create more orphans like me. We decided that we would rather make friends than enemies, even when it was hard, even when we were angry, even when part of us wanted to hurt anyone, just to make the pain stop." Sira looked at him with her 4 red eyes. "But how do you stop wanting revenge?" Smiled sadly. "I did not say we stopped wanting it. I said we chose not to take it. There is a difference. Wanting revenge is normal. Acting on it is a choice. We chose different." Grace found them there an hour later, sitting together in the garden, watching the sun set. Was teaching Sira a song that human children sang before sleep. The same song he had taught the young years ago, before the attack. She watched them for a moment, these 2 children from species that had been at war. One gray-skinned with 4 eyes, one pink-skinned with 2, both orphans, both survivors, both proof that something good could grow from tragedy. "Grace," Sira asked, noticing her standing there, "why do humans love children so much, even children that are not human?" Grace walked over and sat down with them. The question deserved a real answer. "Because every child is a chance," she said. "A chance for the universe to become better than it was before. When we look at a child, any child, we see everything they could become. Scientists and artists and healers and leaders, we see hope. And we believe that hope is worth protecting, no matter what it costs." The sun sank below the horizon. Stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere up there, ships patrolled the borders of human space. Soldiers stood ready to defend against any threat. A galaxy that had learned a hard lesson watched and waited. But here, in this garden, surrounded by the laughter of children who had been given a second chance, there was peace. The galaxy had learned something about humanity that day, 1 year ago, when bombs fell on an orphanage in Montana. They learned that humans would die to protect the innocent. They learned that humans would kill to avenge them. But most importantly, they learned that humans would never, ever stop loving children. All children. That was what made humanity different. That was what made them dangerous. And that was what made them beautiful. Cross that line at your own peril. Grace closed her eyes and listened to teaching Sira the lullaby. The melody drifted across the garden, soft and gentle and full of promise. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new children to save, new battles to fight, but for now in this moment there was only the song. And the hope it carried.